Hi, darling. Welcome back. So, I am going to start the video in a very airy and harrowing tone by quoting a serial killer. I'm going to quote a quote from Jeffrey Dahmer, and I will explain why at the end of the video this quote was so important when I was making this video. The quote says, "It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight when you depersonalize another and view them as just an object for pleasure and not a living, breathing human being. It seems to make it easier to do things you shouldn't do." Why is this quote so important for me and this discussion? You'll find out at the end. But before we do that, darlings, let's watch a few videos on why that basically have helped me to think about why do men, not all men, and I know people are going to say, not all men, yes, not all men pay for intimacy. I'm aware of that. But before we get into the nitty gritty and the meat of the conversation, let's watch a few videos and then I will add my perspective that is guided by a few research tools at the end. Okay, darling?
Never ever be with a man that has ever used escorts, sugar babies, massage parlors, any of those things. Never do it to yourself, girls. I promise you'll regret it. Even if you are the escort that is going to marry this guy, trust me, this is a man that pays for validation. It's a man that will pay to feel desired. It's a man that's not willing to work on himself enough to get the women he desires. And more so than anything, it's a man that doesn't look for emotional and spiritual or intellectual connection with a woman. He just looks for what he sexually desires. I know you're going to say, oh, all men have that desires, all that. No, not all men. All losers have that desire. The desire to just have a woman that is just good for them sexually. The biggest red flag is men that pay for sex is they're usually porn addicts. They are absolutely addicted to pornography. And how you know that they're addicted to pornography?
What do you think pornography is doing to the male brain?
Pornography does to men is it allows them intense gratification without the fear of rejection. And what men need is rejection in order to build their bravery and redirect them. If I'm really overweight or if I'm not making a lot of money, I'm living in my mom's basement and I go out into the dating world, I realize women don't find that attractive. So I redirect myself. What pornography allows me to do is maintain that state whilst getting the gratification I want. And the other thing it does to men is it blurs their true value. So they will see these beautiful women online, go into the real world, and say if he's a 4 out of 10, he should be aiming for a 4 out of 10 woman. But he'll think, I don't want that girl. I'm not attracted to this girl. And they'll be aiming for the 12 out of 10s, and they can only access them through escorts or through, in America, they call it passport bros.
From my own experience, accessibility is one of the reasons why I sought after escorts in the first place. Instead of seeking a fulfilling or a healthy relationship, I just chose to go after whatever sexual experience was the easiest or the most pleasurable. And sometimes, this was with sex workers or any woman that I knew in real life that was just attractive and that I was able to get in bed with. And as you can imagine, this really started to affect my dating life and even my social life because I was not able to connect with women on a deep level. Instead, I just saw them purely as sexual objects for myself to desire. And this completely damaged my view on women, and it only got worse as time went on and I continued to go and act out. And think about it this way. It takes an intense worldview like this to be completely okay with having a sexual relationship with a woman who doesn't even care about you or is sex trafficked or someone that you don't even like in the first place. That's cold-hearted. And just to be able to be in those situations.
It's 1,000% correct. Men are not as emotionally invested when it comes to sex. Okay? So stop using a man sleeping with you as a man liking you or loving you. No, 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 no. Sex is not a big deal for most men. Okay? Men can have sex with women they hate. Men can have sex with women he's not even attracted to, by the way. Okay? Men can have sex with girls that he doesn't even want to be seen in public with because he's not as emotionally invested in the act. So that's not how men show love. Men don't show love by sleeping with you. That's not it. That's very, very wrong. And I hope somebody listening to me will pick that up. Okay? How do men see sex? Men see sex
as I was reading articles, journal articles from scholars on the topic, I read a particular journal by Jan Jordan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And there's a few things that were very pertinent to me that basically were glaringly highlighted for me. And that is, there's obviously different categories of these men. There's men who go to buy escorts or sex workers because they are socially inapt. They don't have the skills to hold or be attractive. They don't have the ability to engage with people socially. They don't know how to read social cues. And that could be for a myriad of reasons, whether it be mental health or they are probably somewhere on the spectrum. And for some men, it's more about the novelty. They get to experience a fantasy that they've never had before, and they get to try some of their darkest and unspoken or taboo fantasies. So I saw that, and another thing that I also saw, it's either very young men or men who are socially inapt, and the vast majority was also married men in the conversation. And that made me think so much about so many things. I don't want people to think that I see the women as purely victims in the scenario or the men as evil perpetrators. I believe the truth is somewhere in between. It's a gray area. There are obviously a small percentage of women in that industry who might enjoy doing that, but majority is circumstantial. Like the majority of women in sex work or the sex trade do not want to be there. Let's get that clear. Like the small majority who do are exceptions. So one thing that I was reading, as I was reading like a lot of psychology texts as well, and I saw the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and one of the biggest psychological needs there that appealed to me and are important for this discussion is psychological needs. Since the sense of belonging, the sense of wanting love and relationship. And as I was reading, the highest level of this is self-actualization. And why are these important for me? They're important for me because they allowed me to view this discussion in a different way, whereby I had to ask myself, why are these married men wanting escorts? Why are they so? Because as I read, I saw a lot of them mentioning convenience. It's just convenience. It's less risk than an affair. And the men who are socially inapt talk about they have such trouble connecting or talking to women. They don't know how. They don't feel like they are physically attractive enough or have the money or appeal to attract women. And it spoke to something deeper for me. And for me, my worry is this. These men are obviously paying for human interaction. And even from quotes from sex workers, they talk about there's also an emotional aspect to sex work. They are not only providing physical pleasure, they're also providing an emotional outlet. So the men come there for the fantasy and the men come there for physical pleasure or emotional pleasure, not emotional, basically a place to vent. I worry about that. I worry because there is just certain elements of being a human being that are priceless. And I feel bad for some of these men because there's something about people being drawn to you naturally, people wanting to be around you naturally, and the process of buying for emotional support or buying physical pleasure is that you are basically you are doing a shortcut to something that could be learned to do and achieve without paying. I believe that we all need pain in our lives. We all need pain. We also need pain and pleasure. We also need to learn. With these men paying for physical pleasure, they are losing the process of actually getting to know a woman, how to understand women, how to know what appeals to women, and how to improve themselves to be appealing to women, especially the men who are looking for deep and emotional connections through sex work. You are losing the ingredients, you are losing the process. For example, if you are, what do they call it? If you are baking, there is a process, there is techniques, there is steps by step where you are putting the ingredients, where you are adding, and you are learning the techniques to make the dough fluffy and soft. Even with cooking, why do I mention that? It's the same thing when it comes to interacting with human beings. You have to know what are the steps? How do you get to know a human being? What are the steps to getting a fulfilling human connection? What should I do? What is wrong? What is right? What is healthy? What is unhealthy? What is appealing and what is attractive? What is emotionally stimulating and what is physically stimulating? There's so much lost in the process of buying physical intimacy. And I'm not trying to make them villains or anything, but we have to think about it. There is almost a weird illusion where I can tell some of these men don't have the ability to read social cues, because a lot of them were talking about how they basically think the women found pleasure from, the sex workers found pleasure from being with them and they enjoyed the experience. And for me, I was just like, this is glaringly obvious. If you pay someone for a service, they have to provide the service at the best of their ability. If you're paying me to do something for you, I'm going to be nice. I need the money. And it's almost like the sex work industry gives them like the easy way out where you just get to skip the entire process, the learning process. I don't think you can ever take a shortcut to anything in life, and anything that is a shortcut has very little longevity. Whether it be school, that's why people take years to specialize in something. It takes years. It's like even the men who get women without paying, it took them experience, pain, and pleasure. I believe that the core thing that joins all these men who buy sex workers, whether it be the men who don't have the social or the physical appeal, or the men who are just too busy and are doing it for convenience, or the married men who don't want to have affairs, the most common theme is that they are afraid of pain. They are afraid of the risk. They are afraid of rejection. What do I mean by that? The married men are afraid of their wives finding out that they are looking for these they basically desire other women. They have almost like a need that they're obviously struggling to fulfill in their marriage. There's a deficiency in the marriage, there is a dysfunction in their marriage, but they are so scared of rejection or losing their wives that they would rather go to an escort. Same thing to the men who have social inabilities. They are looking for an easy way to interact with women, and I feel that's a group I feel the most empathy from. There's another group, the men who are exploring. The men who are exploring worry me a lot. The ones who are looking for a fantasy, because those are certain traits there that scare me. Because there is safety from what I read in the space of sex work where you get to explore. But there's also the scary side that you are willing, because this person is selling the service and you're offering them a lot of money, you are willing to push the boundaries of fantasies of what you can do to these persons, because there's so many fantasies that I've heard and seen people talk about, like the Potter party fantasy of Dubai. That's something that, like, basically excreting on someone as a sexual fantasy, or just inflicting pain as a sexual fantasy. That for me tells me that you don't see the person that is offering the service as human. You see them as the ability, as like a means to an end. They are the service, and it takes a certain level of being solipsistic. What do I mean by solipsism? Basically, the ability to think you're the only one with a brain and everyone else doesn't have a brain with an internal dialogue. I don't think some of these men who are looking for fantasy care whether the person they're interacting with is a person or has feelings or has thoughts, and how much their desperation is pushing them to do this fantasy that you have. I don't think every fantasy has to be fulfilled. There's certain things that I would love to be showered in diamonds. I would love to be I don't know, swim in, I don't know, chocolate, whatever. I'm trying to think of something outrageous, but it doesn't mean it has to be done. It's just a fantasy. Some things are just the creative process, the stream of thought from the human mind, and you shouldn't give it that much focus and power to influence you to going into deeper and darker fantasies. Do I think all these men are bad? The men who are looking for fantasies, the men who are looking for companionship, or the men who are just doing it for convenience, the married men who just are scared of having an affair? Do I think that they are villains? I don't know. There's somewhere in between. It could be potentially that with some cases, but my thing is this. I think the biggest issue I have and the biggest worry I have is that these men who are looking for these services are looking for something convenient, easy, and is pain-free. What do I mean by pain-free? I'm not talking about fantasy of pain or BDSM. No, I'm talking about they are pain avoidant. They are trying to avoid pain, the pain of losing your wife, the pain of taking time out of your work to get to know someone, the pain of growing to become desired, to showcase your beauty, your interesting skills, your talents, to attract the right people. They are pain avoidant. You pay for a service for someone to pretend that they are into you. And that for me is like just a shortcut to everything. And my worry is with these superficial interactions is that superficial interactions are like a nicotine addiction. And I talk about this because I've had and struggled with a nicotine addiction, vaping. Girl, I've been vaping for a while. I stopped a few months ago, but yeah, it's like an addiction. You are trying to get artificial pleasure because these interactions are also for slavery. You're getting artificial pleasure. And the problem with artificial pleasure is that it is an endless pit. It doesn't end. There's no point where you are satisfied. You are constantly chasing the good feeling, the good feeling, the good feeling. You need to accept pain. You need to go through pain because pain allows you to have depth. Pain allows you to go into the deep layers of what makes you you, to break down, to know what makes you you, what makes you break, what are your flaws, what are your strengths, what is your trauma, what is your ability, what is your talent. Going deep into pain opens up a world of so many deep layers to you that you become so rooted like a tree to the ground that you are content whether you don't receive instant pleasure. Instant pleasure is instant. You will constantly chase it because you are looking for something deeper. And I don't care. For me, it's like, I don't care how people can say it's just easy, it's physical, there is something there being lost. You are essentially objectifying each other. The woman is an object of pleasure, and you are also an object of, I don't know, you are basically a man who is being led by his body, by his instincts, by his primal instincts, like an animal. Most animals are primal. They are led by hunger, anger, and all those emotions. Whereas if you remember the hierarchy that I talk about, there is self-actualization at the top. And self-actualization is when you have become so skilled at something that you can go into depth with it. You can express it. You can teach it to other people. You can do it. You have such good mastery of it. Whether it be your spirituality, your fitness, you have gone into such an intrinsic part of you, because I believe every person on earth has a gift that they have, and it's only achieved once you get to that point of self-actualization. So what I say is, I worry. Why do I worry? Remember the quote from Jeffrey Dahmer at the beginning where he says, it's a process to dehumanize another human being. And for me, my worry is, it's either the men who are doing these things do not desire depth. They want surface level interaction, and that's all it is. They are just primal animals. Or these men will never know how to deeply connect with human beings. They just don't have the skill to deeply connect with human beings. They don't know how to. And each scenario is scary. And I'm not saying that they are these things, but the potential to become those things is very scary. And from the evidence, it seems like they just want surface level interactions, which is sad, because you basically become an object of your desires, and you objectify yourself as being an object of your desires, and other people become your objects. That's scary. I feel like human beings are such interesting universes on their own. Each person is interesting to encounter, and I worry about people who don't have the ability to connect to the humanity of other people. So, darling, let me know what you think. in the comment section and leave a knife. No, not a knife. Leave like a flower in the comment section if you got to the end of the video, and leave your opinion as well. Thank you, darling.